Hello and welcome to PentaLive from Pentalog. I'm Peter Green in New York. Today we bring you another episode of what we're calling DEFCON 19, Tools and Strategies to Survive and Thrive in the COVID-19 World. Today we have Vlad Georgescu, Pentalog's expert in running remote teams. Vlad is coming to us live from Brașov in Romania, where he has a crew of something like 200 people working remotely on IT and software projects. We'll be back with you right after this. Vlad, welcome. And to you people out there in Webland, let me just remind you that if you have a question, please put it in the chat, and our producer, Christelle Lazo in Brooklyn, will read it out during the show. So, Vlad, welcome to PentaLive. What you do is really quite interesting. Tell us about how we manage a remote team, especially in Agile, where there's usually a lot of daily and weekly meetings among team members. Does the COVID situation change things in how you manage a team remotely?
Hello, Peter, and thank you for having me on the show. Yes, of course, there are a lot of changes that we have seen during the COVID crisis. And on our side in Pentalog, we've been very fortunate that we started our Agile migration a few years back. So for us, agility is not something new. It's something that we already have into our DNA. So to answer your question, on the events that we have on the weekly events, we are already familiar with them. We already handle them in all of the teams. So for us, changing to a remote team was not so impactful in terms of we were already doing work from home in the past. It was a benefit that we had in the company. So we were all kind of set up and ready to do this type of work from home. Of course, our IT departments did an awesome job, a great job at the beginning. In terms of maybe 1 week, we had almost 95% of our people working remotely. So we're really grateful on this part as well. Now, in terms of the events that we have in the teams, it's beneficial that right now we're all in using remote tools like Teams, because it's easier to connect. And we've seen this from the beginning. In the past, we had maybe to book a room to have those type of meetings, to get everyone in the same place, to do a stand-up. You know, in Scrum, we have those daily meetings, which are called usually stand-up, because you want people to stand on their feet. It's a time box meeting in 15 minutes. So we don't want people to stay and talk too much about other aspects. We are looking at 3 main questions and how the goal of the sprint is going to happen. But now with Teams, it's easy. You just click a button and everyone is connected. So we've seen that people are faster going to the meetings. We don't have to wait 10 minutes for everyone to get in the room or in the meeting. We can start 1 minute past the due date. So this type of things are beneficial for us.
What are some of the downsides to it? You know, I mean, everything from, I would imagine, onboarding new team members to building trust among people. How does that work?
It's funny that you mentioned onboarding people. In Pentalog, we have a nice onboarding process where we take the first month of a person joining the company. We assign them a person which is called buddy for that person. And we have regular meetings, and we have a tour of the office and tour of the tools and everything that we do. And it was really interesting that we had some people that came onboarded in our company, and they reached exactly in the week of COVID crisis starting. So for us, it was a very new thing, and we didn't know exactly how to react. But since we used our agility, we managed to figure out what are the things we should adapt and how we can make things better for those people. For example, we invited them into calls with multiple people, like 20, 30 people, so they can know people that would have been known by moving around in the office. You see faces. So this is how we try to accommodate for this type of changes. And also we involve them with more people, not just their main body, but with other people who could present the culture of the company, the way we do things, the projects. So I think we adapted and we were able to do this really fast, not for all of the colleagues, but for most of them. And now we added in our process this type of tools and this type of communication, and we are planning to do it regularly for all the people who join our company.
You know, one of the advantages, you refer to this in stand-ups and things about Agile, is the sort of fast feedback loop, that people are constantly in contact with one another. And so, you know, before something goes wrong or as soon as something goes right, everybody else in the team or in the project knows and they can adapt how they're working. You're not sort of sitting in your isolated rooms like a waterfall project waiting for Jack to finish his thing before Mary can start hers.
Peter?
Remotely. Can you hear me?
Yep. I think you were mentioning something between waterfall and agile, and your question was?
Yeah, let me try again. We're having some quality problems here. I apologize to all our listeners. Well, this is one of the issues I'm going to ask you about. What do you do if everybody can't get a good connection on every day of the week? If your upstairs neighbor is downloading Minecraft and you're trying to program, that can use up a lot of bandwidth. No, my question was, you know, how do you keep people in the loop? There's a fast feedback is a big advantage to Agile, that you're not just sitting in your room doing your task like in waterfall and then the next guy picks it up. It's much more of a cooperative process. So how do you replicate that kind of communication that can happen, you know, across the desk in an office, but you know, people are physically siloed. So how do you maintain both the communication and the quietness or isolation they need to do their work?
This is a good question, and in terms of isolation and quiet work, you know, each of us was responsible to find a nice place in their home where they can be professional. And on the other hand, it was nice to meet our colleagues' children and to meet their pets and see them. So it was something that we used to create a new type of bond within our teams. Then going back to how we stay professional about it, we have those daily meetings. You know, in Scrum, we start with a planning meeting, then we have every day a daily meeting. Then at the end of the sprint, which is the iteration in Scrum, which is usually about 2 weeks, we have a demo to our customers and then a retrospective. So we took advantage of all those meetings, like in a daily meeting, after we discuss about the project-related aspects, we would spend a bit more time to discuss personal stuff or to drink a coffee with the team. Some teams even have a first meeting in the day to drink a coffee and to share this type of social discussing with them. Then at the end of the sprint, we always look at the retrospective, and the retrospective is the way we look. You know, there are 3 pillars in agility and in Scrum, and one of them is about inspecting and adapting. So in the retrospective, we always look at how things went and how we can make them better. And during this time, of course, we had situations where people said, I'm more productive in the office, or I have some issues with the desk, or I need a second monitor. And we try to tackle all of those individually, because it's not a general rule, not something that happened very often. In addition to that, in Pentalog, we have one-on-one meeting where the Scrum Master and each team member have on a monthly basis a meeting where they can discuss those things. What we did at the beginning of the COVID crisis was to try to do this faster, like every 2 weeks. so that, as you mentioned, to have a fast feedback loop, to see if things are degrading or are moving okay faster. And what we found out was, fortunately, that people really felt comfortable. It was nice to be at home. They were doing their own jobs and agenda, so it was really nice. And we were even trying to measure the performance of our teams. We did surveys, and what we found out was that people felt more productive. Even though many people are concerned about working from home, but we found out that we feel more productive. And for me, for example, I'm always in meetings every day. In the office, we have a nice building with many floors. Changing between one meeting to the other, I had to switch the room or to switch the floor, take the elevator. So I was always in a rush. Now with Teams, I just sit at my desk and I press two buttons and I'm in the other meeting. And this has happened to many of us, as I said. And this was one of the feeling and one of the reasons why people felt more productive during these times, even though it might sound strange, but it was for us.
I mean, it's funny you mentioned this going from meeting to meeting. I'm finding with Zoom meetings, you have one at 12 and one at 1 and one at 2, and you just click from one to the next, and there's no time to stop and think and absorb what happened. And I'm realizing that when I was working in an office space and you go from meeting to meeting, you have a few minutes in between to just sort of digest what happened, organize your thoughts. How do you, are you finding ways to deal with that? Does that affect productivity, that there isn't any of this downtime?
Of course, the majority of our team members don't spend this much time in the meetings because they have to write code, or to test it. But for us to do this type of meeting switching, we're trying to figure out what works for us. For some of us, it's okay to have maybe 1-2 meetings minutes before the other meeting. A colleague of mine has developed a strategy where he starts the meeting at 10 minutes past the fixed time and he ends it 10 minutes before the end of the hour. So this gives him flexibility to juggle with the time, and if he needs more time to spend in the meeting, he decides to do so. If not, he has enough time to do the context switching that you were mentioning.
Interesting. And what about, related to that, this whole question of creativity? People find that the ability to work together. Hello?
Yeah, I can hear now.
Yeah. We often find that one of the great things about offices is that we bring people together and unexpected creative things are sparked by simply being in the same room and talking to one another, or a chance encounter in an elevator. How do you replicate that when people are working? It's always great. You just step out for whatever, a coffee, or if you think that the nicotine is going to save you from COVID, a cigarette. How do you replicate that kind of creativity that can often be really helpful, particularly in an agile environment, whether it's programming or any other activity?
What we tried to do was to brainstorm with our teams to see what they would like to see implemented that would help them, what ideas they have. There were various things to implement, like playing games together or having beer from time to time. We even had a beer with the whole office in Brasov. We had an office reunion where we had 200 people, and then everyone who wanted to stay on could stay on and drink whatever they wanted to drink. And it was interesting. You can imagine when you have more than 15 people in a call, it's hard to speak. But I think it was beneficial because not everyone was speaking, and we made jokes and we discussed about different things. For example, this week we're planning, since for us 1st of June will be coming, and we're planning to do a contest with photos of us being babies. And the challenge is to guess who is in the picture, even though we never seen each other, how we look like babies, you know. So we try to do those things that would socialize and help us create bonds, because even if we wanted, we couldn't connect physically to each other. We were all inside our rooms and our homes. So we try to find those remote ways of doing it.
That's very interesting. Let me ask you, one of the things that, well, let me ask you first, when this shutdown or lockdown begins to ease up and people can come back to offices, do you imagine that you will be better off if people come in, or how will things change, and how will you be able to manage a team that may now be hybrid office and home? Have you given any thought to that yet?
Of course, and before I can answer this question, one of the things that lead us to the conclusion of it maybe is that, as I mentioned, we've seen greater productivity from our teams, and we confirm this from our customers who mentioned that our teams have been at least the same performance level as they were in the past. And for some of our customers, they even mentioned that having us on board was beneficial for them. For some of the projects, we were maybe the only team that kept on working because they had to shut down their office and were not ready to work remotely. So having this in mind, of course, for us right now, as we also see in the industry with big players like Facebook and Twitter, working from home is not something that we consider to be bad or to be hard to implement. On the contrary, we've seen that it works. We've seen that there are benefits. We've seen that people are productive. And so the question is, how many people want to return to the office right now? We've did some surveys and we're continuing to do this, and it seems that not so many. There are a few who'd like to come back to the office, but mainly for the social part, to be together with the team, to drink that coffee together. But in terms of working, most of our teams are relaxed and feel confident that working from home on the long term would be something that they can handle.
That's interesting. One of when you mentioned Facebook, well, Twitter and Facebook have both announced in the last week or two that they don't expect most of their employees to return to office spaces. Twitter, it seemed, at least the way it was framed, as a kind of positive thing, and with Facebook, you can only imagine, particularly from the way it was framed, that it's just about, gee, we can make more money by not paying for offices. But one of the things that I've noticed in the Twitterverse, the Twitter comments about this, was that many programmers are saying, gee, now I can work from home and do two jobs and nobody will know. I can work for both Twitter and Facebook, Google and Microsoft and Apple all at the same time, and nobody will ever know. But seriously, what about that kind of thing, that people can either pursue projects on their own, or that, there's a bit of a danger that people may be, multitasking or taking advantage of this? Obviously, a lot of that depends on team spirit, but what do you do about it?
On our side, one of our core values is trust. And being an outsourcing company, we have to trust our people, because this is one of our most valuable assets that we have in the company. So for us, trust, it's in our DNA. We trust them, and we trust our customers, and we trust our company. And in this time, I think we all proven to ourselves and to everyone involved that the level of trust was not something out of the ordinary. It was something that we all expected, and it was something that will go on. So if someone will do the things that you mentioned, it might be an isolated case, but overall our teams are responsible, and they are professional, and they are doing their job, and we've seen this many times. Now, as I may also mention, we do have those daily meetings where we discuss about things. We use all the KPIs and indicators that we can use from Scrum, like the velocity of the team. We look at charts. We have the cumulative flow diagram that shows us how tickets are moving and how things are progressing. So it's not a measure of control, but it's about visibility and transparency. And since those are also two of our values, we try to embrace them and to emphasize on them. And we've seen that, especially during those times, the teams that we have been very good at showing visibility of what they're doing and reporting to the customers, maybe even more often than in the past, to emphasize and to build on this trust.
And what about some of the specific things like pair programming, where you used to have two people sit next to each other in front of one screen and start, building their software and writing their code and figuring things out, literally physically next to each other? How do you deal with, things like that, or that kind of, building UIs, for instance, where, it's vital to have two sets of eyes right next to each other as you put things on the screen?
Actually, it's easier to do right now because, when you sit two people in front of one computer, they kind of fight for who has access to the keyboard. Right now, each has its own computer, and we share screen, and we do this type of work. So there's really no impact on this.
And I'm also curious in terms of working with clients, because you can't visit the clients. Does that reduce the ability to get new projects, even if they're quite happy with what you're working on?
I don't think so, and we were even fortunate because we've been using our cameras, and not always in the past we had meetings using our cameras with the customer. So now it was nice to also meet another side of our customers, to see them in their home. And this created, like I mentioned before, a different type of connection between our teams and our customers. So for us, since we are remotely, as opposed to our customers, of course, we don't get the visits from them, but we get to visit them every day if we want. And it's easier to involve them and be part in our teams on a daily basis, to connect on the demos. So again, it's something that we've seen beneficial. So if you ask me, I think the only thing that wasn't beneficial for us, of course, except for the whole worldwide crisis that we're facing, but in terms of productivity and teams, it was just the fact that we were missing our colleagues, the social part of it. We have colleagues who are alone, and for them it was harder to be alone the whole day long. But everything else, it's going upwards for us.
Well, so is there anything else I should ask you about this? How you manage these teams remotely, run remote scrums, or what else do people need to know? If you're, say, a CTO and you're thinking, I'm going to have to do this in my company because we are not going to be coming back for months, or, some people now have decided that I'd like to keep them, but they really want to work from home. What should people know? What have I left out here?
I don't know. In my perspective, like I said, we adapted. And so what I would like to suggest maybe to those type of CEOs or companies is to think about the Agile process, and to think about how being an Agile company, an Agile team can help them. Because this has proven for us that works really well, and this is the recipe, if you want, that we can recommend and suggest to our customers. This is what we do, we're good at it, and it's proven for us that it works. So this is something that I would really warmly recommend.
Okay. Thank you, Vlad. Do we have any other questions? Yes, Christelle.
Hi. Yes, I was making.
Hello and welcome, Christelle Lazo, our producer in Brooklyn.
Yes.
How are you today?
Good, thank you. I have some questions. The first one is, I know that some of our customers were not inclined to have remote teams in the past for their projects. How do you feel it has evolved? Like, because of this crisis, do you think they are like more inclined, or what did you see? What did you notice with the clients?
Actually, even before the crisis, we had this opportunity, and it was something that we always agreed with our customers. So, as I said, it was a benefit for our teams to work from home with the approval of our customers. And we had rarely cases where people were not able to work from home. And these situations were practically where mostly they needed to be in the office near some physical devices or to increase this, I don't know, the availability for them to managing those devices. But since the crisis, of course, we reinforced our security. Our security and infrastructure team were able to set up everything. We have VPN connections, which are secure. We have our own accounts, which are managed in a centralized way. So all those have shown our customers that we are doing and we are taking security of their data and privacy seriously. And so I think that for us going forward, this would be a good opportunity. I think that now our customers have seen how things are moving, and as I said, they are confident. We have even received congratulations from them on different things, including the features that we deliver, the velocity and the speed that we have for our teams. So I think going forward, would be a good option.
And because of this work from home situation, do you feel like the clients are checking in more often than usually?
I think they did at the beginning, but we were proactive and we also wanted to reinforce our transparency, because we expected them to have those kind of doubts. It's human nature, is normal. We are speaking about large amounts of money here. So we tried to do this before they asked us. And so their questions were asked a bit in advance, and very few other questions were unanswered. So I think that being agile like this and adapting to the situation really helped us.
Yeah, in fact, that's the point that I really want to emphasize. Like, do you think comparing agile teams and teams still working in waterfall, do you think we had this advantage on being able to like react quicker to this crisis, to this like work from home situation?
Definitely. I would say definitely that. And just think about one of the industries where, for example, waterfall is very well used, is like the automotive industry. And just think about how that market was affected, how that industry was affected. They couldn't be so agile as we were. So if we look just at those things to put them together, I think we definitely had an advantage.
Mm-hmm. And just to summarize, so like when I was listening to you, the only difference between like the usual remote work and like this work from home with the COVID situation is basically you just have one additional event, which is not an additional event, it's just the monthly event you had before, like the one-to-one with each team members. You now have it like once a week or bi-weekly. Is that the only thing that has changed really in the agile process that you're following?
Well, actually, we changed the frequency only at the beginning, and now we're back to doing it every month. In addition to that, we had, of course, communications from our CTO, from our CEO, and from our local agency manager, like I was saying, our customer success manager. And we've also added some more events that are, for example, towards learning. We have an event that's called Lunch and Learn, that we have some colleagues who are working on it, and people just get together in their lunch break. They study a subject, ask questions. This is an event that we also had in the past, but now it's easier to do it remotely. We also have some other events which are called Pentabars, where we gather around and listen to a presentation and maybe drink a beer during that. Now it's harder to do them remotely, but we're trying to do that also. So we're trying to move all the events in an online manner so that we keep our culture and we keep our people informed. And I think this is helping us. But we didn't add anything in particular, so we're just doing these Scrum events that we have. Mm-hmm. And in addition, maybe we've added some surveys, some ways for people to be able to share information to us, to have a new way of sending impediments or information or questions that they have, so we can answer in a timely manner.
Cool.
Wow. Well, thank you, Vlad. This was really great. Vlad Georgescu in Brașov, Romania, and Christelle Lazo in Brooklyn, New York. I'm Peter Green in New York, New York. And thank you all for joining us for this edition of DEF CON 19 on PentaLive from Pentalog. And we will see you next Wednesday at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. That's New York time, so that would be 6 a.m. in most of Europe, 5 a.m. in, no, sorry, I got that all backwards. That would be 7 p.m. in mainland Europe, 8 p.m. in Romania, and about 3 p.m. in San Francisco. So we look forward to seeing you soon. 4 p.m. in San Francisco, sorry. And I'm going to get a new watch. Take care. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.